Hey guys, I'm here with Bob Reeves, and we're going to continue in the training process of developing some content for us to just get our minds around what it looks like to be a team and function in a leadership role at the church. And so I want to introduce Bob Reeves to you, and he's going to share a little bit about who he is and his story, and then we're going to go through a little question and answer time and have him. So Bob, could you share a little bit about your story and where you're at and what your role is, and the story of where you've been and where you're at, where God's taking you to?
Sure. By the way, thanks for the honor of talking to you guys. I appreciate it very much. I actually came to pastor Calvary Assembly just a little over 18 years ago to a congregation of less than 20 people. And we had a mountain of debt, a very small facility, virtually no parking, and almost no people. And over the course of that 18 years, we went to multiple services in that facility, built a new facility. We now have 3 services in our new facility. We've gone from less than 20 to last year, our average attendance on Sunday was 580. We're bumping the 700 this year. We had over 900 on Easter. And so God has blessed us a lot along the way. And so the work that we do at our church council or church board level has expanded substantially over time, but it's been pretty consistent in what we focus on. I also serve as Secretary Treasurer for the New York District. They allow me to do that on a part-time basis, so I'm typically in Syracuse on Tuesdays and on Thursdays, and then travel occasionally for the network.
So Bob, could you really quick explain what a Secretary Treasurer does for the New York District? What does that role entail?
My 2 primary responsibilities have to do with oversight of the credentialing process. So we help people obtain credentials or increase their level of credential from certified to licensed or from licensed to ordained. I also, by reason of this office, sit on lots of boards and in lots of meetings, so I take lots of notes. And then lastly, oversee the financial responsibilities of the district. We do have a bookkeeper for that, but ultimately I still sign every check, so that's over 3,500 checks every year with my signature. I actually look at every receipt, every voucher. I figure if I'm the one going to be held accountable, I should actually pay attention to what I'm writing my name to.
That's great. So that's a really awesome story of what God's done to take you through from basically 20 people to now where you're really functioning at probably an entirely different way that you lead. Mm-hmm. And so could you maybe talk about, I'm going to assume that from when you started, what your constitution and bylaws was and how you functioned then to what you are now. Can you talk about maybe some of the evolution of what that's looked like in the process of development for each step of the way so maybe some shifts in how you're organized and structured?
Our constitution and bylaws has actually evolved very little. We've only made a couple of adjustments to our constitution and bylaws in the 18 years I've been there. The biggest adjustment that we made was in who qualified to be considered for church council. And so what we do is basically council members make recommendations about people in the church they see as reasonably mature, reasonably faithful, and reasonably spiritual. And we invite them to participate in what is a 12-week class. We meet once a week for 12 weeks. And we take them through the training that is necessary for them if they were ever going to sit on council or serve as an elder in our church family, extending pastoral care. And basically now, almost all of our nominees for council come out of people who've completed that. Currently, right now, we have, I think the last number I heard was 27 available elders, but our council still only consists of 3 people plus myself.
Okay, so can you describe your system of governance? Because you're talking about your council and then some of the things. Can you define for us what the different pieces look like for you there?
Yeah, I mean, our council is basically our board of trustees. That's required in New York state law, and it's required as 501c3, which is a nonprofit organization. So they oversee everything that is our legal responsibility, both in record keeping and in terms of our interaction with New York State or how we process business under those laws. They do a great job at that. Once you learn those things, it's not that it's terribly complicated. It's just you have to learn those things on the front end. Other than that, a lot of their stuff is evaluation of what we're doing and recommendations on how we can improve things or fix things that are broken. The way we work is our primary responsibility after we have observed where we are financially, looked at financial reports. Our next primary responsibility is to solve problems. So we bring problems into the room and we go to work to solve them.
Very good. So how do you see your role as the lead pastor in relationship to your council? What does that look like?
I have 3 different relationships with our church council. In the first relationship, I'm submitted to them. If I started preaching heresy or started abusing people emotionally, they have every right to hold me accountable to that. So in that way, I'm submitted to them. When we are working through a decision that we need to make, I am one among equals. I don't get extra votes because I'm the pastor. The truth is about probably 75% of the decisions that are made in our church are not made by the council. They're made by ministry staff and they're made by myself. But there are things that the council has to weigh in on. And so in that relationship, I'm one among equals. And then for purposes of training and equipping to do the work of ministry as an elder in the church, then they are submitted to me. And in addition to the 12-week curriculum that we walk them through, we meet together every other month for an hour, and we talk about something that has absolutely nothing to do with business or any of our agenda items in a council meeting. Every elder is invited to participate, and we just talk about things you need to know and equipped to do in order to serve our church family well as an elder.
So that's a good segue to talk about. So maybe I missed this earlier. I heard the number 3.
Yes.
That's how many got. Now, are you one of 3? Explain how that works and how does that function for Article 20?
Right. Article 20, in fact, New York State nonprofit religious law requires a minimum of 3 trustees. And so we elect 3 individuals to serve. They're in staggered terms, so we have an election every year. You can serve for 2 terms. After 2 terms, you have to cycle off for at least 1 year. So that consists of our board of trustees, and I chair that. So it would be those 3 plus me. And that consists of our official church board.
Okay, and then meeting-wise, you mentioned you get together every other month for the one segment. How often do you meet outside of that other meeting?
Sure. All elders are invited for training every other month, but our actual church council or church board meets twice a month. And we actually meet Saturday mornings at 7:30. Everybody's back to their house by 9 o'clock. We divide our responsibilities up between those 2 meetings, and between those 2 meetings, everything that needs to be done is done. And in addition to that, I'm getting them early in the morning instead of at the end of a very long workday. I really want the best they have to offer in terms of their thinking, articulating their concerns, evaluating and reflecting on the challenges we're facing or the opportunities we're looking at. And so for us, it has worked really well to run that on a Saturday morning. One of those meetings, we meet at a restaurant, we have breakfast together and do business. The other meeting, we meet at the church and we'll have coffee and maybe a snack, but then we do other business there.
So can you tell me a little bit about the difference between the church council and elders?
Church council is responsible for all the legal responsibilities required by New York State and by our Constitution bylaws. Our elders fulfill an expansion of pastoral care. At this point, I can't get to everyone every time. So we have elders available to pray at the end of every service. They're scheduled for that. Elders that serve communion, elders that make visits to the hospital. So I've got a team of 27 of those folks who are trained and available to help. And then out of that 27, 3 are responsible for all of the legal issues that we face as trustees.
And it's, I think I heard you say that the 3 that are elected come from the eldership pool.
Correct.
Once they've gone through that 12-week training, they become an elder. And then out of that group, are you comfortable talking about the change for that, why you did that? What was the evolution of you coming to that as the kind of the major evolution piece?
We had 2 primary concerns. One is that we were constantly bumping into in our nomination committee, not having enough names to submit to our church family for consideration. And that indicated to me that we didn't lack a number of people showing up on a Sunday. We lacked an investment in people to train them to be able to serve at these kinds of levels. And so that's how we started doing the elder training class. And our primary responsibility and goal there was to invest into people's lives so that if they got that opportunity, they would be prepared for it. If they didn't get that opportunity, they would still be available to do additional ministry in the church. And the other thing is that our council, as our church grew, the pressure increased to the number of things that they were responsible for. And so there was pressure to expand the council. And I'm not a big fan of always having more people in the room, especially for some decisions. It's actually far more efficient to have a smaller group. And all the pressure they were feeling really had to do more with pastoral care than deciding whether we would expand this ministry or how much we were going to pay for this service. And so I thought it was in our interest to expand the pastoral ministry, but keep the actual board of trustees a leaner group. Those decisions have to be made relatively quickly. The days that a church can take a long time to make a decision are behind us.
Yeah.
We have to be pretty agile if we're going to function well in our society.
Very good. So do you have any tips or cautions to our guys that are serving and gals? What, like, you have your 12-week training, which I love. If you could email, I don't know if you have an email version of that.
I do.
An attachment that you could shoot out to me. But what are just some things that if you were, able to roll the clock back to, we just had our first meeting.
Cool.
And if there was something that you wish you could have told your guys, your team, after all these years that they would have had from the gate that would have really just kind of set the table to make things a little bit easier going forward, what would that be?
Over the years, I've actually developed what's known as the annual speech. If I fell over dead in the middle of it, at least 2 people at the table could complete it for me. The first thing I tell them is how essential confidentiality is in those meetings. That I need a place where it's safe for me to candidly and openly brainstorm and discuss options and opportunities and not worry that some segmented portion of that is going to come back to me through an email or a phone call or a conversation from someone else in the church. So that confidentiality is essential, because if I'm not safe to speak openly there, then basically I have to operate the church on my wisdom only, because now I can't access their wisdom through questions and conversation. And if I'm going to operate the church on my wisdom only, then I don't need another meeting for that.
Yeah.
I'll stay home and I can figure this out. I actually believe God's brought those people in the room, but for us to get the best use of that time, conversations have to be confidential. The second thing I talk about is the way I view it is the direction of the church is not established by the council. The direction of the church is established by the pastor. I think that God gives vision through the pastor to help a church understand the direction it's going. But I also know that there are times where my pace doesn't match certain tensions or realities that we're contending with in the church. There are times when maybe I'm a little reluctant to move more quickly, and the council will put the accelerator on, and they'll say, you know what, if the direction is good, the timing is right, let's go. There may be other times where I'm wanting to move a little more quickly, and their read on the health of our church family or their understanding of where we are in this process is that we need to just slow down, let's get our foot off the accelerator, let's bring more people into the conversation. So I really feel like the pastor owns the steering wheel and the church council owns the accelerator and the brake. And that combination has worked really well for us. The third thing I talk about is it is not helpful if they try to micromanage staff or if they try to micromanage ministries in the church. We have people we have trained, equipped, and released into those responsibilities. No staff member in our church should ever feel like they have 4 bosses. Nobody can survive in a healthy way, emotionally or mentally, in an environment like that. So the deal is with all of our council members, if there's something about a staff member you're concerned about, the only conversation you have related to that is with me, because I have the responsibility to have that conversation with them. That way, staff doesn't feel like they're constantly under the gun from someone else. And then the other thing is, I really ask them to bring their very best to every meeting. That the decisions we will make may seem small in terms of how we're allocating maybe hundreds or thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars, or how we're allocating time or using facility. But there is no other decision they will make that day that will have greater eternal consequences than the ones that we will make when we get together. So we need to be spiritually sensitive. We need to be open and unguarded. We need to be willing to hear as much as willing to speak. And by the way, every person is required to speak. There are no silent members on our church council. If you're not offering anything, then I need someone in the chair who will bring a perspective. So that's kind of the annual speech they get, and then we elect our secretary and treasurer for the next year. So that just happened 2 weeks ago.
That's great. So for you at your annual meeting, you do an annual business meeting.
We do.
What do you set on the table that you present to the body, and what's kind of the filter for what the council handles and what you bring to the body?
Great question. That's probably where we've seen more evolution in our church family than any other area. We used to have a very traditional annual business meeting, and people would stand and give reports about every ministry department in the church. We'd have an election for a council business person. There'd be a financial review about what came in last year, how do we spend it, and what's left, and then a review of the budget for next year. It's really hard to build a lot of enthusiasm for those kind of meetings. It's almost proof of someone's faithfulness when they show up to a thing like that. We have really evolved that process remarkably, and so we have condensed our reports to more graphically pleasing pieces of information. When a staff member stands up, maybe our youth pastor, give a brief report on youth ministry. They can maybe share one or at the most two things that was significant that occurred in the last year. The rest of their time is all about, this is what we hope to accomplish this year. We have moved it to a vision-driven meeting instead of a report meeting. We want to validate that we've seen evidence of God's faithfulness, and we want to be grateful for that. At the same time, we're not here just to celebrate what God has done. We're here to focus on the next steps because our future is far brighter than anything that's happened in our past. That change has been remarkable, and the energy level in the room has gone right off the charts. We still do a fairly thorough financial report, but even that has been streamlined so that people have a much better sense of just the overall financial health of the church and how we handle those resources. That's so important that people trust that every dime they have given sacrificially, we have very diligently used to make sure that we get the maximum benefit for the kingdom out of it.
That's good. And I think this may be one of my last questions, unless there's any other things that you have. But what's your sequence for your annual calendar look like? And that, and I'm just talking about for the business function. Do you have? Do you look at things quarterly? What leads up into when do you do your annual business meeting, and what are the kind of the stops along the way? Do you have audits built into your cycle? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's great. Our annual business meeting actually occurs in the last week of February. I don't know how that process ever got started. It's usually not great weather in Rochester, New York, last week of February. We moved it from a midweek service, which, I mean, it's even harder to get people to show up to that, to now it has moved to following our third service. On Sunday, we provide lunch for everybody. And we are seriously looking next year at actually having a Vision Sunday in which all of that is covered during our service, because we think the vision casting component of that thing is so hot. We would love for everyone to be exposed to that, not just members. Our budgeting is completed, so our budget is already been processed and established by the church council before the end of the year, which means that in the last quarter, all of our ministry department leaders and our staff are creating their budgets. We give them tools to do that with, and we actually have them create 3 budgets. The first budget is, this is what's absolutely essential for us to do ministry. If we don't have this, we can't function. The second budget is, if we were going to expand ministry, this is what that number looks like, and this is what we would add to it. And the third number is, if we were allowed to dream and do what we think God wanted us to do long term, this is what that budget number looks like. And then we make sure everything essential is covered. This last year, everything essential was covered in every ministry department. Every expanded thing was covered, and several things out of Dream Things were covered. So that makes them seriously consider, though. There's no guarantee. If your ministry budget was $10,000 last year, this year you're starting at 0. You need to verify to us you need that money. I don't like spend downs at the end of the year just so they get their $10,000 next year. There's that corporate invasion into church world just wastes money. And so them putting that together has been really, really helpful for us and for them. And so all of that is passed by council, and that is not elected or voted on by our church family. It's just presented to them so they understand this is the vision we have for this coming year and what we think God's calling us to do. This is what we think it will cost us financially, and this is our plan for it.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule.
Oh, happy to.
Talk to us and give us your input and your insight. That's fantastic.
Hey, what I want to tell you just before I go, I'm hearing fantastic things about the church down there. and about your leadership, Pastor Will, and very grateful to have young leaders who are taking confident and bold steps into the future God has called them. Your responsibility is not to try to do something like I did. Your responsibility is to do what God's calling you to do. And whenever I get to see that, my heart leaps and I applaud, and you guys are doing it. So my hat's off to you. Great job.
Thanks, Bob.